Welcome back. This page of the Little Black Whiskey book is dedicated to a very special whiskey, named after a quiet sort of a man. Now, this is another Irish whiskey. That little bit of a kick I said I was on, it's still going strong. And this one is The Quiet Man. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't there a famous movie by that same name set in Ireland? That's not what this is named after. Nope, nope. This is named after John Mulgrew. His son, Kieran, decided he wanted to make his own whiskey. I do admire this about him. He wanted to make his own whiskey and just, instead of figuring out all of the little details, went with one of those companies that will take your idea and make it into a whiskey, but you don't have to start a distillery, raise all the funds to do that. Like, all of the things involved in that, like maybe you got other stuff going on, maybe you just fancy making a whiskey, and honestly, coming up with the amount of money to start a whole distillery and the time, dude, we don't all have that. So they used Niche Drinks as their distiller, I guess, is the company that made all of this happen for them. And they are based out of Northern Ireland in Derry, and they have a couple different things going for them, but if you go to the website of that company, it's pretty much like the quiet man, the quiet man, the quiet man. And I was put onto this by a friend, someone who was like, oh, you've tried out the Duke whiskey, why don't you try the quiet man? Again, no relation, no relation. If you haven't, I'll link the video below about the Duke whiskey. That's another really fun one with some cool little trivia bits and history, and another whiskey where someone had a really good idea, but they didn't necessarily want to devote their entire life to whiskey making, which some of us, maybe you want to devote it to whiskey drinking, but the entire process of creation, maybe not so much. So this is named after his father, who was, I don't know if he owned bars. It kind of sounded like he might have at least been a bartender at various bars around the area. Either way, the man had an excellent reputation and would keep your secrets, let's say. A man of discretion, a quiet sort of man. So I love that idea, the thought of your bartender, like if it's a regular place and you kind of get to know them, it's kind of like therapy in a way, right? Like, especially if it's kind of a quiet night and you're just sitting there having a cocktail, chatting with the bartender. Yeah, it's a little bit like therapy, and you're telling them things that you maybe don't necessarily want the entire rest of the world to know about. So he was good about keeping those things secret and the confidence of his customers. So I love that. Wonderful. He had a stellar reputation, and now let's check out the whiskey created in the man's honor. So here I have the 8-year-old whiskey. They've actually created several. I'm not entirely certain which one was done first, but this one is the 8-year. It is a single malt Irish whiskey. I do always like it when there's some detailing on the bottle. So we have the quiet man actually in the glass for the bottle, which is really cool. In addition to like some nice gold lettering, like it's really pretty. It's a nice little bottle to have sitting on the shelf. And this whiskey was, like many, aged in ex-bourbon barrels. I do really want to try the 12-year-old that they finished in sherry casks. If anyone has, let me know in the comments like how fast I should try to seek that out and find it. Or maybe it's something that I can get you down the line, but I don't have to rush to get, so please let me know. But in this instance, let's pour a glass and raise it in the honor of An Fácin, Mr. John Mulgrew. So this one right away, I do notice it's very light in color. Like, not even quite at the honey level. Like, it's very, very light, which again, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just is something to note. I will say though, if I'm using something in a cocktail, I kind of like to have some color so that you feel like you've got some bourbon in your cocktail. Maybe that's just me. It could be a me thing. Mm. This one has just such nice spice notes to it. It's not too heavy. It's definitely the kinds of baking spices you'd find, like the clove, your nutmeg, almost a little bit of cinnamon. it just feels like someone is making Christmas cookies, like all of the different Christmas cookies in the house. It's lightly like kind of like lightly toasted, like the grain, and the flour for the cookies, with the spices. It doesn't really smell that sweet though, so it's nice. It's definitely more fall vibes. Yeah, it's like you're sitting in a back panel, like the wood panel room or something, and someone's making cookies somewhere because you've got like that kind of woody. Oh, it's just so many fall vibes in this. Oh, in honor of Mr. John Mulgrew. Yeah, this one definitely has some more heat to it along with those spices. So it's like, again, like once in a while when you have those ginger candies that are just really spicy, like unexpectedly spicy, because it comes in with those delightful, like light cinnamon, like baking spice notes, but then when you actually get a sip of it, it's extremely warming. You've got that nice heat to it. The oakiness comes through. You've still got the spices. It's not that fruity or anything like that. Like there's a hint of sweetness. I don't think it goes quite so far as being a caramely. And then on the finish, you're left with the nice warming spice feeling, like the clove, but not too aggressive. Like sometimes clove can be quite aggressive. This isn't like that. It's just sort of like a hint of the clove, some of the spice, and then like the toastedness is sort of what you're left with in the end. And it's a nice finish that fades away fairly slowly. Like sometimes you'll pick up some more of those like mentholy, medicinally sort of things, but I don't notice any of that in here. It's just delightful. It's really nice and smooth, the way a lot of Irish whiskies are, which is one of the things I do like about them. Now, since the man this was created in honor of was a bartender, right? So their cocktail page, if you go to the website for the Quiet Man whiskey, they've got some really interesting takes on old fashions. I do like the one, I haven't tried any of them yet, partially because I feel like for a lot of them, you sort of actually have to have a bar. You have access to a wide variety of spirits. The one involving yellow chartreuse and lemon is extremely tempting to me. I only have green chartreuse though, so I don't know if using lime would be equivalent. No, that's not how that works at all. But, but maybe I can figure something out with that, or just find a friend, like, hey, does anyone have any yellow chartreuse you're trying to figure out how to use? I'd love to try that with a whiskey cocktail. Again, I think it depends on the whiskey. Like this one is a little more spicy, so it's gonna stand up a bit, and I feel like the lemon would be a nice balance to it. So very curious about that one. Also, I feel like the parent company, the niche drinks, there's something like I don't know if the person who runs it or is heavily involved is like has an apiary or they're just really into beekeeping and honey, but like a lot of these seem to involve honey in terms of their products and then several of the cocktail selections. Now, I do like some honey with whiskey. So, I mean, I could be just making stuff up because some of their other things had honey, and I just felt like I saw it a little too much for it to be a coincidence, but not in a bad way, certainly in a fun way. And I did find some good inspiration in the cocktail page, even if I can't quite make all of it happen. I definitely want to try a few of them. I'll have to let you guys know. I think it'd be fun to do some YouTube shorts or to do like the short form of trying out some of these different cocktails. Just because for so many of these, you have to buy something. Like the one I really wanted, the take on the old fashioned that involved apricot liqueur. Very tempted by that because I do enjoy a whiskey with some nice apricot notes. So I thought adding some of that to a whiskey cocktail could be a lot of fun. Just in general, even not specifically with this whiskey, but any others that are fairly spiced would probably stand up well to some nice apricot additions. So that's certainly worth checking out if you do like to make cocktails and you like ones that are a little off the beaten path, a little more creative. I mean, you probably have to get some things to make these, but that's okay. I mean, if I used to dedicate like a month to a certain cocktail, just if I had to buy specific things for it. So I'd be like, October is the month of this cocktail, and then I'd get the special ingredients to make it, and then like that's what I'd have for the month. So it's kind of a good way to do it. And I was also able to work through some of the Death and Co. cocktails. I don't know if you've ever seen that book, like like you have to have access to a liquor store in order to create some of these things. And you have to be living in like some certain part of California that gets all of these exotic things that you're never going to find if you live in the Midwest or anywhere else, really. Maybe New York City, I don't know. Anyway, this is just a delightful whiskey. I really do enjoy it. I tried some with a friend a while ago and did find myself getting my own bottle, especially as we're approaching fall. I thought this is a nice transition one We're definitely like into September, like the heat has died down, the evenings are nice and cool. So when you're sitting out by the fire, especially since this doesn't have any smokiness to it and it's not really that toasted. So if you're sitting near the fire and you want something that's going to complement the smoky notes instead of being necessarily additive or being too much, I think this is really nice. It's at a pretty good price point. I don't think it was I did pick it up on sale, so sometimes that makes me a little biased. Like if something I'm like, oh, it's only $40, but normally it's 50 or something like that. Like I can't remember exactly what this was, but it's somewhere in the 40 to 50 range. It'll depend on what region you live in and any sales or specials the stores might be hosting. But I certainly think if you are into Irish whiskey, this one is definitely worth checking out. Please let me know what some of your favorite Irish whiskeys are and what I should try next in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up